The title of my paper is Framing Byzantine Sardinia, Coin Seals and Metal Artifacts. So the core of this research have been carried out within the project which this very event constitute the ending. So I have nothing but gratitude to Alex Metcalf, Hervin Fernandez, Tom Birch, Giovanni Serrelli, Luciano Gallinari, Maurizio Virdis, with whom I shared many discussions and exchanges of ideas that made me grow as a scholar and as a man. I'm also grateful to the Department of History at Lancaster University for having me as a research associate during the course of the project. And of course, many thanks to Nina, because her role in this, registering and making, it's very important. So thank you all, thank you all. So far so good. From the 6th to the 10th century, Sardinia shifted from direct control of Byzantium to its own political features within the Latin West. During these centuries, while remaining within the Byzantine sphere of influence, the island showed different levels of resilience from the motherland to its surroundings, especially after it became the last outpost of the erstwhile Exarchate of Africa from the late 7th century to the early phases of the autonomous rule under the so-called Judices in the 10th century. This was a slow process during which the island developed its own forms of power, society, and connectivity. So this is a chart of the Byzantine coins found in Sardinia. As you can see, the distribution mostly respects the ancient road system, which in turn rides on the vestiges of the Itinerarium Antonini. Apart from the mountainous areas, where an economy much more oriented to the material exchange appears to have been preferable, Byzantine coins circulated in the plains and in the hill areas, with a higher presence near the Gulf of Oristano. During the 6th century, the most attested mint was Constantinople, with coins of Anastasius I and Justinian I. Eastern mints such as Thessaloniki, Nicomedia, Cyzicus and Antioch are attested but in smaller quantities. As regards the West, Carthage is in the first position, with a smaller number of issues from Rome and Ravenna. Clues for an exchange economy come also from the weights, the exagia. All known specimens, 31 in total, are dated to the 6th, 7th century. They are all made of lead, except 2 glass weights, the one we were speaking yesterday, from Cagliari, in the archaeological area of Santa Caterina, and the highest peak of findings, 11 specimens, comes from San Giorgio at Cabras, a place on which I'll return shortly. From the 7th century onwards, the link between Sardinia and Carthage increased, and the African mint became the most widespread in the island, followed by the mint of Sicily. Significantly enough, the highest presence of coins dates back to Constans II's reign, which could not be unexpected due to his sojourn in Syracuse during the 660s. Other mints from the Byzantine West, such as Rome and Ravenna, are scarcely documented or even absent. Alongside the numismatic record, an intriguing witness of Eastern presence in Sardinia comes from lead seals. We know of 81 lead seals found in Sardinia. Of these, 73 were found in the fields of San Giorgio at Cabras, between the ancient town of Tarros, the Byzantine church of San Giovanni di Sinis, which we already saw yesterday, dated to the early 7th century, and the town of Oristano. Apart from generic information about the deposition site, nothing is known about the archaeological context. However, most of the seals date to between the 6th and the 8th century and give an important and very rare insights into political life in early Byzantine Sardinia. In these regards, it is worth mentioning the seal of Theophylactos, an officer of the Domus Marine of Constantinople. It was originally ascribed to the 6th century, but its module, the style of the red border, and the lettering suggest a safer chronology to the 7th. Interestingly, an identical seal was discovered from Carthage. Local historiographers traditionally describe Theophylactos as a curator, but this detail is not mentioned on his seals. On the other hand, the recurrency of 2 seals pertaining to the same bearer might constitute a trace of the synergy in the management of the imperial properties between central and peripheral entities of the Exarchate. The remaining seals from the island document the existence of a ruling class formed by duces, apipatoi, ipatoi, and apeparchontes. The first office is referred to by the seal of Petronas, Patricios que dux Sardinias, dated to the late 7th century, already part of the Thierry collection in Vienna and currently being studied by Vivian Prigent, Apologies, but I wasn't able to find a photo of these seals. Anyway, it's pretty important. Other duces active in the 7th century are known from documentary sources. The former is Flavius Pancratius, Apeparchon que dux Sardinias, sender of a letter edict, the text of which is missing, contained in the Codex Laudianus Graecus number 35. There is also another dux, on whose behalf the ex-sceptor Ioannis seized all the writings of Maximus the Confessor to a bishop of Sulci named Eutalius in the mid-7th century. Such affair is known from a confession written by Eutalius himself. Of course, I'm not able to stay on every single matter, but it's just to give an oversight of the administral geography in the island in this very moment. The apipatoi attested by the seals are Theopemptos, Diomedes, Constantinos, and a fourth official with an unreadable name. The former was found in 1858 in Fort Donjanus, but is currently lost. The other artifacts come from San Giorgio of Cabras. Based on details such as the invocation Theotoke Boezi, arranged on 3 lines on the obverse, and title in the dative on the reverse, they suggest a chronology to the 7th century. The seals of Constantinos is of particular interest for its double monogram typology with the invocation formula on both sides surrounding the monograms. This detail finds an almost identical comparison in an artifact of the Dumbarton's collection. The seals of Ipatoi presents also singular features. The module of the letter of the seal of Constantinos, up left, suggests a 7th century attribution, and the same can be theorized for the exemplar of Petros, for its style or of double monograms, with the name on the obverse and the title on the reverse. The seals of the 4 Apeparchontes, so Georgios, Patricios, Ioannis, and Katsis, the latter also Drongarios, date back to the 7th century as well. The specimens of Georgios and Ioannis feature an invocation to the Mother of God on the obverse, rendered in 3 lines, similarly to the reverse, which is on 4 lines. The seal of Georgios is also analogous to a seal belonging to an homonymous Apeparchon, whose seal was discovered in a hypogeal grave at Tanca de Sveie, Torre Trencada, near Ciutadella, so we are in the Balearics in Minorca. Interesting comparisons can be suggested also for the seal of Patricios, which recalls striking analogies with an artifact kept in Barton Oaks. Both seals have a Laurent first monogram on the front, which suggests a dating to the 7th century, confirmed by the broader module of some letters, like the theta at the center. As concerns the seal of Katsis, finally, the monogram on its obverse of Laurent II type dates to the 7th century as well. So, the existence of a ruling class in Sardinia does not only pass through the presence of lead seals. In fact, a series of luxurious metal artifacts found in the island testifies a certain level of economic prowess of its elites and recalls the adoption of a shared language, so to speak, in expressing the status. The material record is composed primarily of fibulae, brooches, and earrings. The former are known as disc fibulae and are attested in Sardinia in 16 exemplars, made of gold, silver, bronze, and a single object in electrum, which is the object at the center. Of primary interest is a golden fibula coming from Brunque Solia, between Serdiana and Dolianova, so it's a rural location, which is the one of the left. It's a location in the rural hinterland of Cagliari. So, the object was discovered with a pair of earrings, on which I'll discuss later. The fibula, as you can see, is in an exquisite condition. It shows striking similarities with a specimen of an unknown provenance made of electrum and kept in Cagliari, which is at the center. And if it's not enough to suggest common artistic influences, other interesting similarities come from a fragmentary specimen from the Nuraghe San Marco at Genuri. The latter was also discovered alongside an earring, which will be equally described later. And later is actually now. So the stylistic links between the fibulas shown interesting patterns of fashion and trend in choosing shapes and decoration of the jewelry by the highest social classes of Sardinia. This possibility is corroborated by the analysis of the earrings, of which we know exemplars from Dolianova Serdiana, again, Genuri and Siligo, in a simpler version, which you can see here. The former feature a pelta body combined with bell-shaped pendants and globes, and suspended by small chains. The objects from Genuri, on the other hand, show a higher level of decorative richness. Its plaque presents two facing peacocks on both sides with a cantharos in between and a cross-potent above it. One side is embellished by a polychrome champlevé enamel, the other is made through the cantilever technique. We are not able to identify a local production or an import. Nevertheless, as I already said, the existence of similar products in different archaeological contexts of Sardinia recalls a tendency of emulation and style recurrence by the elites. From the fall of Carthage, so 698, and the capture of Septem, 711, the Exarchate of Africa collapsed. A series of questions ignited the historiographical debate on how and in which terms this event affected Sardinia, as also Alex said yesterday. As regards the monetary circulation, the argument has come to focus on whether there was a Byzantine mint in the island. Striking coinage for the island was firstly suggested after the discovery of a hoard of several solidi of Constantine IV in Carthage. The specimens bear a retrograde S in the reverse, which you can see. Let's see. Let me have the laser pointer. So it's difficult to see, but you can see here. There we go. Here. So it's on the right side of the cross on Cagliari. Here, again here, and so on. So, this retrograde S was interpreted by the first letter of Sardinia, but such possibility is still hypothetical. Anyhow, from the first reign of Justinian II and prior to the capture of Carthage, solidi with a regular S in the reverse are documented in the island. The design and fabrication of the coins suggested that at least some of the stuff of the erstwhile mint at Carthage would have been transferred in Sardinia, while the remaining moneyers would have continued to strike coins in North Africa under the Muslims. Gold coinage of Sardinia is mostly made up of unique specimens. Aside from a few sporadic findings, the majority was found in a hoard from an undisclosed rural location between Porto Torres and Stintino, on the northern coast of the island, so in the upper part. This raises important questions of the effectiveness of its circulation. Compared to the gold, silver and bronze issues, compared to the gold, silver and bronze issues are crudely made. The latter were also mainly struck reusing previous coins, with significant shifts in weight and module. The last gold series bearing the S were struck during the reign of Leo III. The first dates between the rise of the emperor and the year 726, from which the interpretation of the Greek theta in the reverse as an indiction date or a regnal year. The second, on the right, is a series of tremises of poor quality with garbled legend and schematic portraits. After the minting activity ceased and until the end of the 8th century, Byzantine coinage in Sardinia reduced to a small number of folles. The causes of this tendency may be read as a local effect of a wider monetary crisis which took place in the Western Mediterranean, causing the Byzantine gold currency to suffer a progressive debasement. Indeed, at that time, the mints of Ravenna, Rome, Naples and Syracuse struck solidi and tremises with a lack of gold content, suffering a decrease in circulation. At any rate, the monetary economy of Sardinia was supplied by currencies coming from elsewhere, mostly Lombard coins. The latter are mainly tremises issued by Liutprand, found as reused artifacts, like for example grave goods, or collected in hoards. These are both unsurprisingly outcomes considering the low level of metamfineness of this series. We were discussing about it yesterday. Framing this set of evidence underpins many questions of connectivity and Sardinia's resilience within a changing geopolitical environment. It may have been an attempt to use other currencies instead of the Byzantine capital, also considering the intrinsic weakness of the S coins. The latter have never been discovered outside Sardinia itself, contrarily to the contemporary coinage of Syracuse, for example, which can be found all over the Mediterranean and even in the Baltic. Arguably, Sardinia's condition could be interpreted not just as a scarce internal circulation, but also as the effect of a newly oriented outlook towards the West, especially the Italian peninsula. In any case, this does not mean the island society severed its contacts with the motherland. A lead seal mentions an Ipatos named Isachios. It features the monogram Theotoke Boetsi without the quarters in the obverse and a phytomorphic filling element in the reverse, in addition to the name and title. These elements, alongside the module of the lettering, for instance the broader theta and beta in the obverse, suggest a chronology to the 8th century. Along the Ipatos, a new kind, so to speak, of officer is attested, the Ipatos Kedux, whose role integrated civil and military power. Two officers with this title are known on the island, respectively documented by sigillographic and epigraphic evidence. The first is Theodotos, bearer of a seal of uncertain origin dated to the mid-8th century and included in the Vatican Library collection. His seal featured a Laurent V monogram on the obverse with quarters and a red border. In the reverse, the officer's name is reproduced with a cruciform monogram encircled by an inscription mentioning the office. This is such a distinctive feature because the monogram at the reverse was reserved usually to offices, as it can be seen in many examples of seal included in the Dumbarton-Oaks collection, of which I gave, for evident reasons, just one or two comparisons. If its dating is correct, the seal could slightly predate the mention of the second Ipatokedux known in the island, whose existence is attested by an inscription in Greek letters on 7 lines found in Porto Torres. The artifact has been dated to the last decades of the 8th century. The inscription praises a victory against Lombard and other barbarians by an Ipatoskedux named Constantinos. The text, however, concentrated praising the emperor, arguably Constantine V, as good luck bearer, triumphant, ruler, and peacekeeper, as the legitimate representative of God on earth. The attestation of officers whose power encompassed the civil and military spheres leads to reflect on the extent of the defenses of Sardinia after the fall of Exarchate. We don't know in which way the victory celebrated by Constantine was obtained. However, other documentary sources report that prior to those years in Sardinia, an army was actually present. A letter sent by Emperor Justinian II to Pope Conon between 786 and 787 mentioned, and I'm quoting, regular troops of Sardinia and Africa, so de Sardinia atque de Africano exercitu. Paul the Deacon, in his Historia Langobardorum, wrote about soldiers from Africa and Sardinia, quoting again, milites a partibus Africae et Sardiniae venientes, mobilized against Messetius after the assassination of Constant II in Syracuse. As concerns the archaeological data, we don't know of soldiers in large number, but of a few dozen individuals with their respective families. We know of 22 rural locations when military objects have been found in association with artifacts such as belt buckles, rings, earrings, and necklaces. The identification in places made in prehistory and protohistory is equally significant. This mainly involves nuraghi, megalithic tower-shaped buildings which spread in Sardinia during the Bronze Age. Their civilization is nowadays one of the most significant features of Sardinian history and landscape, since many complexes have been reused from time to time and archaeologically excavated. Since I could not reflect to all the available examples, I choose to focus on the nuraghi of Sumulinu in the area of Villanova Franca, which we are going to see tomorrow, by the way, and Sadomubecha at Uras. Archaeological excavation at Sumulinu attested that after the 5th-6th century, part of the complex became as an agricultural pastoral settlement, traces of which have been found in multiple components of the site. 2 centuries later, part of the nuraghe became a burial site. Traces of funerary activity were discovered in the compartment named F1 and in the tower H. The former contained at least 2 graves with artifacts dating back to the 8th century, such as the plaque of a Corinth belt buckle and a bronze earring with a globe pendant. The objects were found together with 2 iron knives, 2 rings, a bronze brook, and an almost intact necklace made up of faience grains. As for the Tower H, the stratigraphy inside of it evidenced no continuity between the agricultural usage and the subsequent funerary phase. The graves were accompanied by a series of objects, particularly 2 intact belt buckles, one of which belongs to the Corinth typology, and the other one features an ogive plate, which is actually singular and rare to find. The most interesting feature of the context, however, was the discovery of an imitative Lombard tremissis issued by the name of Maurice Tiberius, date back to the end of the 6th century and 90 years after the reign of Cuniper. So we are dealing with a coin which have a long usage. The second examples concern the Nuraghe Sadomubecha, which is like the old town. Is located on the outskirts of the town of Uras, next to Oristano, not so far from Sumulinu. Its top hill position dominates the southern axis of the plain of Campidano and results in a strategic point of control of the routes to the towns and settlements of the area. The archaeological excavation of the Nuraghe revealed it was reused in late antiquity, firstly as an agricultural settlement between the 5th and the 6th century, and then as a funerary area in the 8th century. During the latter, the keep, the courtyard, and the access corridor to the towers D and F of the Nuraghe were occupied by graves. During the removal of the superficial layer of the access corridor to the keep, several pierced bronze coins were found together with 2 iron knives, a pair of silver earrings with a gold globe pendant. Apologies from the photo, it's low quality photo, I realize, but it's the only photo we have currently, so sorry. And many glass paste of necklaces. The excavation in the access corridor to the tower D led to find a set of iron and bronze objects, ascribed to a multiple burial of around 12 occupants. A number of fragments belonged to the military and cavalry equipment, particularly spears, short double-edged swords, maybe sacks, daggers, knives, the handle of a shield, a horse bit, riding harnesses, and an iron bridle loop, apart from, and also with 2 flintlocks, which I made. There we go. Weaponry and cavalry objects were found with 5 bronze belt buckles, respectively 2 of U-shaped plaque, placa AU, 2 of Corinth, and a single Balgota typologies. Each of the former, in particular, had the plate decorated with a hunting scene, which in Latin venatio, and a zoomorphic relief. So we have, to be clear, so we have the U-shaped plaque, the 2 Corinth, and then the Balgota typology. This one is the one with the zoomorphic relief, while the upper one goes with the hunting scene. You can see the hunter here with a spear, with his trying to piercing an animal, probably a warthog, while a dog is surrounding the scene and participating in the hunting activity. Last but not least, the above-mentioned artifacts were in stratigraphic and contextual association with 2 well-preserved Lombard tremisses struck by Aistulf and Desiderius. So we are in the late 8th century. The relevance of the artifacts to the Byzantine cultural sphere comes from both archaeology and stylistic comparison. The latter allow to find common features in iconography, for instance, the several examples of venatio decoration on the belt buckles. This scene is attested both in Sardinia and elsewhere, like in Calabria, and I have this information thanks to Sara Tacconi, which is currently a PhD candidate at the University of Cagliari, and she's conducting a research about the distribution and the findings of Byzantine belt buckle in the Western Mediterranean. So this research is ongoing. At the same time, other objects seem affected by a diffusion trend focused on a local scale. Such is the case of the globed pendant earrings, which apparently are exclusive of Sardinia. Their diffusion and presence recall what already suggested about the circular fibulas and the pelta earrings, whose style does not find strict comparison with other products in the Mediterranean. Interestingly enough, a couple of earrings from Norbello, Santa Maria della Mercede, grave number alpha, has been found in association with a circular fibula, suggesting the persistence in adopting such models even during the 8th century. Moreover, the objects are both made of 2 metals, a detail that could suggest a provenance from the same workshop, or even their conception as a parure accessory. The articulation between local taste and style from elsewhere could find a common way of interpretation through the magnifier of the status expression, especially if we consider the contextual association between the above-mentioned artifacts and the weaponry. In this sense, the presence of cavalry equipment could recall the willingness to present the deceased as warrior on horseback, also testifying the investment of the family, since buying and maintaining a horse had to be economically challenging. So by the end of the 8th century, Sardinia has already begun its political transition from Byzantium to the Latin West. A puzzle over a wide range of hypotheses have been suggested. Intriguing evidence come again from lead seals, particularly two specimens belonging to Torbenius and Xerxes. The seal of Torbenius, which you can see on the left, presents a Laurent V cruciform monogram on the obverse and an inscription in Greek letters on the reverse. The name Torbeniu is followed by the mention of the office Archontos Arbore. The seal of Xerxes also bears on the obverse the monogram of the Theotokos and the invocation formula in the quarters. The text mentioned the name of the officer, which is Xerxes, with retrograde letter zeta, followed by its office, Archon, and a problematic series of letters interpreted as Arbor, continuing the last line and ending unreadable due to a major damage on the object's surface. They seem to be the first archontes attested in Sardinia. If this chronology is correct, their seal bears the first mention also of the historical term arborea. This led Sardinian historiographers to consider both Torbenius and Xerxes as judices, because of the presence of both names in the medieval vernacular documents of the Judicato of Arborea. They would use seals in Byzantine style to claim that they appeared as the heirs of the Byzantine tradition, and more specifically, of the original Byzantine rulers of Sardinia. Anyhow, the former assumption cannot be accepted. We can eventually come back to this matter during the question time, because the seals of Torbenius and Xerxes appear to be genuinely Byzantine seals and not medieval replicas. The appearance of Torbenius and Xerxes represents a variation from a previous series of distinctively Eastern names to anthroponymy of difficult explanation. Torbenius is likely of local origin and was firstly documented in the Torveni and Torbenius variations on inscription from central Sardinia dating to the 1st-2nd century. As for Xerxes, it appears to be an unicum in Byzantine prosopography, and its origin is still unclear. The use of the term archon also raises several questions for its vagueness in the Byzantine administration between the 8th and the late 9th century. Taking account of its function as governor of a city or a region, many seals of the 8th-9th century mention archontes of coastal towns of strategic importance in both eastern and western part of the empire. In this regard, the evidence of archontes in Sardinia finds intriguing comparisons with homologous officers in the Balearic, Gozo, next to Malta, and Sicily, specifically Palermo, all of whom attested by lead seals. The artifact from Minorca is dated to the mid-8th century. The seal from Gozo dates to the late 8th, early 9th. Lastly, the one of the Archon Panormu dates to the 9th century, and its primary historical importance rests in being the only seal of an Archon known in Sicily, as well as certainly predating the Muslim conquest of Palermo in 1831. Leaving aside the hypothetical modeling, what comes from the documentary and material evidence is that even during the 9th century, Sardinia has an active part in the reconfigured Western Mediterranean. We were speaking about the Archon Panormu. Additional to the mentioned artifacts, historiography reported the existence of another seal, mentioning Nikitas, Drungarius, and Archon of Malta. The object was firstly studied by Gustav Schönberger, who dated to the 7th-8th century, but sadly there is no known image of the seal, which is now missing, presumed lost, so it cannot be taken into account. So the many caveats associated with the set of evidence make a delicate task to understand the rise of the archontes in Sardinia, also for the lack of documentary record. It may be suggested that between the end of the 8th and the first 9th century, instead of a remote control exerted from overseas, a local representative was preferred as an officer. Similar practices are known in the Western Mediterranean in the same years. For instance, local notables were chosen as rulers in Naples by the Patricios of Sicily during the mid-8th century onwards, or another typical case is Venice, where the office of the Doge was entrusted to a local family, passing from elective to substantially dynastic. Anyway, Leaving aside the hypothetical modeling, what comes to evidence is that even during the 9th century, Sardinia had an active part in the reconfigured Western Mediterranean, as it confirmed by the written sources such as the Annales Regni Francorum and also the letters between the Popes Leo IV, John VIII, Stephen V, and the Judices, which made the first appearance in this very moment. This, again, does not mean an interruption of the contact with the Byzantine sphere of influence. In fact, the analysis of the monetary record just suggests such persistence. Interestingly, the positioning of the known findings of Byzantine coinage outline a distribution starting from the main northwestern city, Turris, specifically for the discovery of a hoard in the area known as Balai. So we are in the eastern outskirts of the city, in a former funerary area, and as you can see, the findings are likely spreading from Turris and going east on the road. This is quite interesting, also because they belong to the same chronology. The record consisted in 37 solidi of Theophilus and Basil I. The set of objects was discovered in casual circumstances and inside a small clay jug, alongside 3 Islamic dananirs, a series of fragments of jewelry, and 22 gold foils. The hoard was traditionally interpreted as the proof of a traumatic event. Nevertheless, its composition could also recall wider trade links. Indeed, hoards of Muslim and Byzantine golden coins have been discovered in numerous examples of Mediterranean and European provenance, with an interesting recurrence to the river routes from the Po Valley to the Rhine and the Mesa. It may be noted that Byzantium and the Islamic world, and later the Duchy of Benevento, were the sources of supply of gold coins, which would therefore continue to circulate. This convergence is more intriguing in the context of our Mediterranean that we increasingly understand in terms of its connectivity, so that it would seem possible to outline the Balai hoard not simply as a traumatic event or a proof of a traumatic event or any sort of interpretation, but also as a proof of interesting wider trade networks. So, in conclusion, the critical assessment of coinage, archaeological and lead seals record offer new perspectives to shift paradigms and change perception of Sardinia's trajectory in the Byzantine Western Mediterranean. This debate is by no means straightforward, since historiography traditionally sketched the island as the periphery in the center. So we need to reassess this paradigm, as such occasions are pivotal to raise the debate on the island long late antiquity. We need to raise discussion also to dismissing the leitmotif of its isolation and hopefully shifting paradigms in the formative phases of Euro-Mediterranean history. Thank you.